Hello everyone. So in this project we're going to build a news portal application with Django. So this contains a news feed for every user and it has from various publishers selected at various categories. User can change their preferences. For example, they can change their categories preferences, publisher preferences and so on. Authorized users can publish their own news with images. So the feed contains short descriptions with multiple news, whereas clicking on one news will expand the detailed news for that particular section. So before we go on to the project any further, let me just show you a quick working of how it works. Okay, so I'm just going to have a login. This user has selected various categories and various publishers. So they can, yeah, he has news from various categories. Okay, so can change those preferences here. So right now I've selected multiple categories. So if I want only one or category, so I can just select one, and this is the only news within that category. Okay, and I can just change these. I mean, open the every news published by this publisher. Okay, and it will just open a page only containing of news with from those publishers, and then I can sort by categories, I mean filter by categories. So I can just open startup news. I'll just uh, yeah, indicate every news just with the category startup, and we have a text section here, whereas every category for that news will be in text section. Okay, so this is how we can filter, but the home contains the user preferences, so I can change it anytime, and I can use control click and it will just open everything for me. So every publication will be only from this publications and not the other. So this person has the permission to actually add news. So I can just add a new news here. So this is a test news. Okay, and this is a short description. And I can select the category for it. So I'm just choosing it as to be tech, and from this, so I'm just filling some random details and some random images. Yeah, for example this one. Okay, and it will be added because I'm an authorized user, so I can actually expand these news. So whenever I click on the news, the brief description of the news will be shown. Okay. mm, Let me change the preferences, and yeah, so these are the kinds. So the permission can be given only by the admin, because it should not be the case that anyone can add news. Okay, so we're just going to, so there are multiple profiles, so I've created these many users, and only few profiles has this permission enabled. I mean, this is just a boolean, so whoever this has this permission, they'll just be able to like update, add the news. Okay, and this is not a publisher, so I can log out and view them, and username is test and testing. So this user does not have the option to add news. Even if I go to the URL, it will just restrict me that I cannot, you are not authorized to view this page. So that's why it involves some, yeah, owners. I mean, it's not actually owner permission, but the ability of the users for some certain operations. Okay, so this is what we are going to be building in this tutorial. Let's just provide you a quick implementation of what the project is about. Okay, so the filtering of all these categories are just probably used with the Django CRUD operations. So just like performing filters on all of those models. Yeah, we're just restricting that few news should have only these publishers and only from these categories. So these kind of operations are actually being performed, and there are multiple reusability in this code. So for example, every news is just another card which contains all of those list views and when we click on it, it opens the detail view. Okay, so whenever I click on the category, for example tech, it will just give me all the tech news. So it's just a detail view. I just have yeah, 2 3 HTML files in for the detail view and so on. So it uses dry principle. We don't actually like repeat the code more times. So that's kind of nice. The features, you can see it has login and register page, admin interface for yeah, making person authorized for news, or these kind of admin users can actually delete the news, have the power to them. And we have a feed page for all users, preferences page for all users, and then we can filter by categories, publishers. We can have multiple categories and multiple publisher preferences. Authorized users can add their news easily. Yeah, these are all what we just saw. So in this, I'm just going to provide how I'm exactly going to cover this project. So first, I'll be covering the basics of Django, and afterwards we'll be showing how the database logic is actually implemented using the ER diagram. So I made an ER diagram in which I show how many tables are there and how they're actually related. So this part is going to be the most important. So actually we'll be just building those, and then we just query from the tables, respective tables of whatever we want. And then we'll start building here, starting with login and registration page. And then we have a user's feed page in which we'll just use the database operations. So we'll query from the news table and we'll get whatever the user preferences news. So and then we are just filtering based on categories and publishers. So as you can see, if I click the publisher or categories, only those kind of, yeah, only those are actually displayed. So they are filtered, and we'll be covering those in that video. And class will be able to create user accounts, I mean news with the user's account. Okay, not just from admin. We'll just have the ability to add news from the website page. Okay, so in order to get started, we need Python, and virtual environment is highly recommended. It helps to manage all the packages efficiently. And then we will just start with Django and Pillow. And we also need Django crispy forms. Pip install Django crispy forms. Those and all we'll be using. So I might not cover installing Django crispy forms, but pip install Django underscore crispy underscore forms. You need to install this in the virtual environment. And next we'll just be installing Pillow and Django and so on. So I'll be using Django 3.1.5. So up next we'll be covering the basic installations and basics of Django to get started for the project. So in this video, I'm just going to cover the basic installations and the basics of Django. So first, let me start by installing the virtual environment I told you in my last video. So this is important to keep the projects in an organized way. Say if you have a Python project which has built with Python 3.3 and you want to create another project which requires Python 3.8. Now if you install the Python 3.8 globally, the Python 3.3 project may not be able to like run anymore. So it's like the code is broken. For it to run, you may need to yeah, install the Python 3.3 packages and so on. So in order to avoid those kind of circumstances, we will create an environment, and inside those environment which is going to install the packages for a particular project only. So it will help to maintain a lot of projects that we have. So I'm just going to cd in my project folder and create a new folder called demo. And here in order, I will just create a new environment. So pip so python -m virtual env, and the name of the environment can be whatever you want. I'm just going to call it environment. Okay, the environment is created, and you can see it just created a folder here. So now to activate the environment, you just need to navigate to the scripts, and I'm just going to activate the bat file. So activate.bat is a file inside environment and scripts. This is going to enter as is, and can see that we are in this environment for now. So the environment has been created in this step, and we are just activating the environment in this step, and it is indicated by this starting. And in order to deactivate, we can just run the command with deactivate.bat, and it will remove that, and we are no longer in that environment. So we're just going to activate this environment, and while in this environment we're just going to install Django. So I'm just going to install Django 3.1.5 in this video, but I recommend using Django 2.2 or above. It's because Django 2.2 is known to be around, it will be in the scope for at least 5 years, but I hope Django 3.1.5 will be too. If you want to install any particular Django version, you just provide the version like this and it will install it for you. So I'm just going to install mine as 3.1.5. Okay, so now we have Django installed. We can now start a Django project. So we have to use Django-admin start project, and we just give the name of the project here. So I'll just say demo project and hit install. So it will just create a folder called demo project, and I'm going to cd into this project. Let me open the same project in my Atom, and let's see the file structure here. So Python project, and okay, so we need to make sure that we are in this manage.py directory, and as well as in the command prompt. You can see when I hit dir, you can see the manage.py. So we are just going to kind of work around it. So since we are in this, we created a project, let's run the project to see what happens. So in order to run the project, we just say python manage.py and run server. We will create, like, we will work on this project by using this python manage.py, and we provide extra arguments, command line arguments like start app and so on. So it's just going to run the project for now. So it says python manage.py and run server. So it is now running on this URL. So this is the local host at port 8000. So I can just copy it and paste it in my browser, and you can see that this shows the Django default page. So it says that our Django has been quite successfully installed, and we are just good to go. You can also use the URL by localhost and at port 8000, and it will just do the same here. So I'm just going to be using localhost colon 8000 for the entire project. Okay, so let's see the Django file structure for now. So manage.py is the actual main file in which it calls the main application and keeps it to run, but we won't be using any of these. And db.sqlite3 is the database that we will use for the project. So after I run this Django admin, it created a database project for me. And you can see that settings.py and urls.py, and we'll just go more of it later. But settings.py actually contains the apps project settings in overall. So a Django project contains several apps. Okay, there might be multiple apps within the same project. It helps to keep the project in an organized way. For example, I can have an app called users, and inside it I can manage all the login, logout, and managing the users logic and so on. And I can have another app for e-commerce where I can just add the logic for buying, selling, and stuff related to e-commerce. Okay, so apps provide those kind of functionalities where we will focus on a particular application and work on it, and it provides high reusability as well. We can use this apps created here in other projects or in other types in where we want. Okay, so let's start by creating an app now. So the server is running. Not to stop the server from running, you can use Control C or Command C. Okay, and I'm just going to create a new app. So I'll say python 3 manage.py start app, and I'm just going to call it my app. So this is the name of the app. We can create according to our project, but since this is a demo video, I'm just going to start a simple app here called my app. And you would have noticed this folder called my app is created here, and it contains file like admin.py, models.py, tests, views, and so on. We'll be mainly focusing on models and views. Okay, so Django follows MVT architecture. So M stands for model, V for views, and T for template. Models.py file is actually where we provide the database logic. We don't actually provide any SQL commands. We're just going to create the database tables in Python only. And it's actually very easy to create databases, and it's actually managed. The Python Django framework manages it very well. We're just going to use models.py for that, so where every table will be a class and so on. And we covered the M, which is models, and V is the views. Here we will implement the actual logic for our applications. Just going to use any kind of logic, matplot. So if I want to plot matplotlib, I can use it here. I can use science, scikit-learn, and other kind of Python project codes that the logic will be actually residing in here. Okay, so we'll talk more about on this later. And T stands for template. It's just a HTML file that we are just going to show on the application. So template actually can render uh, something called Django template language. We'll be able to use Python, a bit of Python code there, but it's quite a bit different. We'll talk about that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just going to use the euros.py for this project. Okay, so a project contains euros.py, an app can contain urls.py as well, but I don't have any urls.py here. I'll just create it in a bit later on. Okay, so you can see a path called admin here. It means that whenever your user, after this localhost 8000, whatever he types something here, so if it is an admin, we're just going to route him to this particular logic. Okay, so since I have admin, it'll just be, it's provided by Python by default. We'll just be implementing more of these. So I can have another path like this, and which means it just says this page. Okay, so right now this page is hosted by the Django default page, and I didn't provide any logic for it to here, and I did not save it, and I did not run it actually. So whenever, this means like whenever the user hits only the domain name, which is localhost, and if we actually have actually deployed the project, whatever the domain name, the default kind of the home page will be provided by this logic. Okay, so localhost 8000 will be removed, and whatever comes after it will be handled by this logic. So I'm just going to handle this logic in the my app that I created. Okay, so I'm just going to use include. This might feel a bit strange for now, but I'll just show you in a bit what we are exactly doing. So include my app dot urls. Okay, so before that I forgot to mention an important thing. Whenever we hit start app command, we just need to go to settings.py as soon as possible, because we might forget, and we should include this app inside this installed apps list. Okay, so I created an app called my app. I'm going to type here dot apps dot my app config. So it's just the name of the app, the first letter is capitalized followed by a config, or you can just copy this last bit from this class name in the apps.py. So this is the class name, and that's what we are exactly providing here. So we are just actually saying to the Django that we have a project and we created an app called my app. I want to include this app to this Django project. That's what we are exactly saying. Without this, Django will not consider this application. So what I'm doing is, whenever there's a URL called localhost 8000 without any like admin or anything so on, I'm just going to like forward this to my urls.app. So right now we're just in the project's URLs, but apps can contain their own URLs. So I'm going to create urls.py and it should be exact this name of the file. Okay, here I'm just going to get this. Okay, so let me just go to views.py for now. So views.py, as I said, it contains the logic for our application. So I'm going to create a function called home here, and it will take a request object, and I'm going to return something, an HTML file, an HTML document property. So I'm going to say from django.http import http response with h and t capitalized here. I'm going to return an http response. Inside it, I'm just going to say hello world. So you know HTML how it goes, like h1 tag and hello world, and I'm just closing this HTML tag. Okay, so what I'm trying to actually achieve is I'm just going to render this HTML tag that says hello world to this URL. So whenever I hit this localhost 8000, it should display this hello world message. Okay, so it is in the views.py in hello world. So we just need to tell Django that what that our URL should point to this views function. Okay, so right now you have transmitted the URL, kind of passed the URL to app specifically. So we have this app. So whatever URL comes down with this, just going to forward it to apps. And then in the urls.py, I'm just going to, this is an app urls.py. So I'm just going to copy this code, the path. I don't need to include there, and I'm just going to paste it. Okay, and here I'm going to copy this list, but I won't be needing this admin and all because it's already taken care of by the main project. So here I'm just telling, let me import views now. So from dot import views. So what I'm telling is, in this directory, which is the urls.py is here, right? And in the same directory, there's a file called views.py. And from that, I'm just going to import views from this directory. Okay. And views contain a function called home, right? I've created a function called home and it will return a HTTP response. And I'm just going to use this views.home and I'll just provide a name here, users home. I'm sorry, my app home. This is because many apps can contain the same keyword like home. In order to differentiate the my apps home, I'm just going to say like my apps home. Yeah, it's not like compulsory, we can have any name we want, just to be specific enough. So up till here, what I've done is I created a new app and included in my installed app settings, and I've saved it. And in this main project app, I'm just saying whenever a URL contains an empty string after the local host, I'm just going to let the app, my app, take care of it. So my app.urls is going to take care of it from now. So after that, you'll just be coming here to this url.py here, and I'm just going to import views. What I'm saying is, whenever a path like this without any string comes on, I'm just going to call this function views.home. Okay, so views.home, what it does is going to return an HTTP response that says h1 hello world. So if I save all of these and run this application now, python 3 manage.py run server. Oh, my app is not defined. It should be in a string, my bad. So it's just like a live server. So whenever I hit save on any of these major files, it will just reload the server itself. I don't need to like run it every time. But so now if I run it, you can see the hello world is displayed here. Okay, so that's how we are just going to render the HTML. But I'm not going to add HTML here. Like it'll be probably hundreds of lines, and I don't want to mess the views. So for that, I can say, yeah, what I can do is I'm just going to create an HTML file. So I'm not going to create an HTML file directly. There's a template the hierarchy here. So inside this user, I mean my app, I'm just going to create a new folder called templates. And inside this template, I'm just going to create an exact folder with the name of the app. So it should be like this: my app, templates, and again my app. And only in this folder, I'm just going to create the new HTML file. I'm just going to call it test.html. Okay, and here I'm just going to use the HTML syntax, and I'm going to use this is from the template. So here I render the HTML directly, but I just need to route this request. Whenever a request comes in, I'm just going to render an HTML page here. Okay, so right now this is not linked, so I can do is return render request. Yeah, I'll just talk about the request object in a bit. So this is residing, there's test.html residing in my app slash test.html. So you might be confused with this path, but by default the yeah the templates will be searched in this my app and templates, and here it will be searched. But in order to differentiate from many apps, I'm just going to create a new folder here, my app, and inside it I'm going to create test.html. It is just how Django recommends it. We can create it inside the templates directly without this folder, but it helps us to keep it organized. So what I'm saying is I'm going to pass this request object, and I'm using the HTML template which I've just shown here. So if I save it now and run this, yep, now it says this is from the template. Okay, so that's exactly how we're just going to build it. In order to avoid like hundreds of HTML lines of code and to maintain it easily, we're just going to do this. Okay, so with this in mind, up next we're just going to import the logic for our application. So in this video we're just going to see how the database is created. Okay, so ER diagram stands for entity relationship diagram. This part is going to be the most important part of the tutorial, because this is what we are actually trying to build, and we will just fetch the value from these databases. Okay, so we have 5 tables. So this is just one database that has 5 tables, namely user, profile, category, news, and publishers. So every table has columns. So these are just attributes. So ID contains ID is a column and username is a column. So user, there are going to be multiple users. Okay, so every user has to be able to identify by a certain user, by a certain column. So if we try to if we try to organize the users based on their names, 2 users can have the same names, right? So if we want an operation only for one user with the same name, so assume that there are 2 users with the same name. So if you want to perform operation based on name, we'll end up applying both of the changes to both of the users, right? So not to avoid that, we have a separate way of identifying a table, that is primary key. It is like the serial number. So every number belonging to a user will be different. Okay, so one user is going to have another ID, and another user is just going to have another ID. So for example, 1 corresponds to user 1, 2 corresponds to user 2. So in this way we are identifying it by number. Okay, so that's why it's called a primary key. In a database inside a table, no two rows should be same. Okay, so every row should be perfectly unique by at least one character. So ID provides, yeah, ID confirms, or yeah, ID definitely makes the table to have different types of rows. So that's why we can see every table has this primary key. Okay, so this is going to be an important one. So I should, yeah, this is an ID. Okay, so user table corresponds to, we are just going to have users. So user is going to be having username and password, but we won't be able to, yeah, we won't need the those details of the password. So user is going to have username. Okay, so this is one table, and he's going to have a profile that has more additional informations about him. So those are users. So I'm just relating these two tables one to one. Okay, it's because every user is just going to have at exactly one profile. So if there is a user called test, the that profile is belongs to only that user, and that user has only one profile called test. So one user has one profile belongs to only one user. That is called one-to-one relationship. So many users are not going to have the same profile, or one profile, or many profiles are not going to be used by one user, right? So that's just one-to-one. So for that we need to perform this, uh, perform this relation, and we have to name it one-to-one in our example. And the next detail the user profile has is, so if he's a publisher or just a regular user. So a publisher is just has the ability to add news, while the user is just going to view the news for just common operations. So this is where we are just storing if he is the publisher or not. So this is just a boolean, but this will be controlled only by the administrator. So we'll implement those details later on, but okay. So this is the information about the user profile. And the user profile contains categories and publisher. Okay, so what are categories and publishers? So categories is just a character field. If this is just a single table, it has, for example, if I create a new category, tech or startup or space or so on, so I'll just add a category and enter space, and that category will be created. Okay, and likewise publishers. So publishers, for example, there can be many publishers, newspaper publisher 1, publisher 2, and so on. So I'm just, if I want a new publisher, I'll just add a new publisher and make them, yeah, make a new publisher, for example, by entering new publisher 1. What these tables do to the user profile is, the user profile is going to select multiple categories according to the preferences. So if he wants tech and startup categories, he's just going to, yeah, select one of these. It's many to many with this table because many users can select categories according to one. So if there's category called tech, this user can, one user can have subscribed to the tech, and other user can also subscribe to the tech category. Okay, and there may be hundreds of users that can be subscribed to tech category. That's why I've said many to, and this many stands for many categories can have many users. Okay, so that's how we are saying that it is many to many. And likewise publisher, this category can select two publishers, three publishers, and so on. And this implies many to many. For this example implies many users can have many publishers, and many publishers can be used by, I mean selected by one user. Okay, so this, in order to provide these, we have to use many to many. And but for user and user profile there's one to one, because if one user is created for one, yeah, one profile, this profile cannot be used by another user, right? I mean, it won't be logically correct, even though we can actually if we want, but it won't be correct in this, in our world. So for that, but in this case many categories can be selected by many users, and many publishers can be selected by many users. So that's what important here. And we have final table called news. So news contains the normal details like integer, I mean the primary key, and the title for the news, short description, and the detailed description, picture for the news, and the date for the news. Okay. So along with that, there are two categories. So that news can contain multiple categories. So one news can contain at the same time it can contain categories like startup, tech, space, and so on. All those categories at once. That's why we have many to many profiles with this category. But it is going to be published by only one newspaper company. Okay, so news company. So that in that case, we just have to say that many news can be published by one publisher, but many publishers cannot add to the same news. Okay, so that's why you have to say many to one. That means many news. So if a newspaper company publishes the news, again that same newspaper company can publish another news. So this publisher has many news. One publisher has many news, but many one news cannot be like contributed by many publishers. Okay, but categories can be, however, like many, it can be even one, but there can be many categories as well. So here is just many to one, but here we have many to many. But it's because the users can select many publishers according to their preference. He's not just going to not going to be restricted to one publisher. He can see the news of other publishers as well. So he or she can actually get many categories and many publishers. So that's why we are just focusing on by saying many to many and many to one. Okay. So since we have this, it is going to implement the table for this. Okay. So inside a news app, we have the models.py. So let me close all of this. Okay. So at first the models will be empty. So it just has only one models. I mean one import. So everything is just I pre-filled it. So now I'm going to explain it with the help of our ER diagram. Okay. So first we have 5 tables. Okay, so every table we're just implementing as a class in our Django models.py. Okay, so for that, what you have to do is, I mean there are 5 tables, right? But I have only 4 tables here. It's because since we are almost every profile is going to have user, Django provides a default user model. We are just going to use that. So assume that we have a table like exactly like this. I have like class user and so on. But assume that this has been already created by Django. So we're just using it to build our application. So since I have this table, I need not worry, but yeah, I'm implemented all of the other tables because Django does not provide these. It's because it's specific to an application, right? So we have, so let me just organize this. And okay, so starting with user profile. So Django provides ID also by default. It's because every table has the same uh, column, right? ID. So I did not specifically implement ID is equal to models dot primary key. Yeah, we don't need that, so I'm just going to ignore it. If we want to have a separate name for our ID, by default it is ID, but if we want a separate name, for example serial number or so on, we can implement it, but I'm just going to leave as is. Most of them are going to use ID. So that user is just the class provided by Django has this username, password, and so on. So as I said, first we are just going to provide one-to-one field with the user profile. So this is how we just say that this profile, I mean this class is going to be one-to-one relationship with this table. So I'm sorry, table and going to be one-to-one relationship with this table. So user means here it is going to be an object of this class. So if I have this like user equal to user, and this is the user instance of this user class, right? And this user profile exactly takes this instance. For example, this will just be, I mean, is publisher is just going to be yes or no. a checkbox, for example. So that's how it is. And we have this category many to many and publisher many to many. So since I have these tables category and publishers, right? And yeah, we're just going to say that this profile is, I mean, this table is going to have a many to many relationship with category and also with publisher. So we say this by like this: many to many field, many to many field. And one more thing is, I have declared this user profile class below, I mean, declared category and publisher below user profile, but I'm using the category class, publisher class before it is being declared. So in order to avoid any errors, we can say it in double quotes. So this is kind of like a forward declaration. It's saying like we have a class called category, but it is below the user profile later downwards. Okay, so we can do that. And also I forgot to say that it's on what is on delete is. So it means if this table is deleted, okay, I mean sorry, if the user table is deleted, then what happens to this profile table? We say that yeah, we said that user is going to have exactly one profile, but what happens if we have this user itself deleted? So we don't have any information about the user. Do we want the profile of that user as well? Yeah, we don't need it, right? It's because like once the user is gone, nobody's going to use that user. So why do we need to have a profile for that user? So we need to say that whenever that user is deleted, this profile for that user is also going to be deleted. So that's how we say that. And is publisher is a boolean field, so default equal false. And this string method is just, if we print an instance of the user profile, it will just print in a different way. If I don't have this method, it will say like user profile object number 1, user profile object number 2, and so on. But I can change that preference by changing self.user.username. So self.user is just everything here. I mean self.user, self.category I can access within this using this self variable, and that user contains that username, I mean attribute username, right? So this table contains the username. So I told you to assume that we already have a user, and we have this field called username. So I just you printing this. So if we print this, I mean return this, we'll just say like the name of the user instead of user profile number 1 and so on. And category and publisher is just same. We have the character field that is max length of 150 and category max length 15 and so on. And at last news. So news just going to have the basic information, the title of character field, and short description, description, pictures, and so on. So pictures just going to be an image field. It can have, yeah, I mean it can have no profiles. A news can be without any images. I mean if it did, it's not a problem, it's going to show. But there can be news without any images. So image field, this is how we are saying, and uploaded to new images folder. So if we see in the media folder, it will be a new images here. Okay, so that's how we are saying it. Yep. And so since I have this datetime field, publish is the datetime at which the news is added. So what I'm doing is I'm using this auto now add equal true. So whenever, I mean it does not ask the users for the date, it will just automatically add the current date whenever a news is being created. So this is kind of convenient for everyone. So they don't, yeah, no one can add news dating that this is an old news and so on. So we're just adding like whenever a news is published, we're adding the current date to it. For example, the 1328 and so on. So category is just going to be a many to many. So as I said, category is going to be a many to many for this with this news, and publisher is going to be many to one. Okay, right. So as soon as we created, what we have to do now is, so assume that I'm the environment. So we have to save. So we have to save this file, but in order to actually save it to the database, we need to make two commands. So Python manage.py make migrations. So make migrations command prepares the database table and kind of logs it to this directory. So these are the make migrations that I have. It will just log what are the changes that we did. I do not have any changes already. I mean, these, for example, I did change from publishers and categories being at the top from bottom, but it's not going to do anything to the database. So my migration says no change detected, but if you save all this code and run it, it will say, yeah, it will create some migrations. And then what we can do is, in order to actually make changes to the database, you have to use this command, python manage.py migrate, and it will actually save it to the database. Okay, so this is how the, yeah, models are saved. So we have this nice feature called admin. So if I can log to local host slash admin, right, let me close this old one. Okay, so before we run the admin, we need to create a super user that can be able to access the admin. So to create a super user, we type python manage.py create super user, and it's just ask me the username. I can use like test and testing, email. So test at some email and password and password. So it has created successfully. This is the event handler, but so now I'm just going to upload with that. So test and testing at 1 2 3. Yeah, we need to run it as well. Staff account. So we have this right now. Since if we save this model for the first time, it won't be shown in the admin site. So admin site provide a lot of functionalities. So we can add new ones. So it just takes the categories. So let me just modify the admin.py now. Okay. Okay, what we're having is, so we're just going to import every from the current folder. We are not implementing the models. So I have this app, right? So inside this app I have models.py, and admin.py is located in the same folder. So I'm just going to import publishers, news, every table from this models, and I'm just going to make it to up visible to the admin page. So I'm just saying models, from the models I'm using the category table, publisher table. Okay, I'm registering it to the admin side. So if I don't have this and save it, and if I run it, no table will be shown. If I have these two tables, well, only those two tables will be shown. So it adds an S. So I do have the name as category only, but it adds an S by default, publishers and so on. So we need to have every most of it for the admin. So what I'm saying is, so since I have registered everything, so in the admin we can just actually create a new news. So let me start so assume that there's a user profile, and I can create a new category, for example, tech startup, business. So since I have this category here, I can actually create a new news. This is a news from admin side. Short description and business. Since I added a business category, right? And I can select and publish existing categories. So I can create a new publisher if I want to, but I'm just going to select an existing one, and description is long description. I can select an image for that news, and So it is saving, and if I log it here, actually I did not have the enroll to the business, so I can enroll to the business and we can see the news. Okay, so the admin can actually easily provide database models. I mean, we can create instances very easily, but our project actually needs to be having a good interface. Along with that, we should be able to add news from here, view news from here, and so on. Okay, so that's what we are focusing on. The admin side does have any functionalities. We can create new users, user profiles, and so on. Okay, but our focus should be that we should be able to yeah, make this graphical changes and testing account. View the news according to the users and so on. Okay, so space means every space news should be shown. Startup means every startup news should be shown, and so on. So these are all the operations that we are going to do, but admin side can clearly provide every news and every operations, but we are just going to render who can see this particular news, who can change those preferences, and who can add news, and those are all what we are going to build in our application. So in this project, I mean in this video, I just worked on the models.py and admin side to render the basic information. So next we'll be implementing this, creating the login and registration page and so on. So hello everyone. So now we're just going to work on the login and the registration page. So we have username, password, and password confirmation on the registration page. The login, just username and password. So Django provides most of these login easily. So it's going to be quite easy project. So easy task. So let's start with the urls.py. Okay, yeah, you can ignore these for now. So what happens is, so whenever a request called login, or you can see the URL, right? Now for login there's register, I mean for register there's register page, login, and if I log out, the page will be this. Okay, so these three are what we are going to do. So I have the basic URLs by setup as, so this will be just by default provided by Django. So I have this include for your app. So whenever a local host 8000 comes in, I mean with just the domain name, we're just going to route it to apps URL pattern. But here in this project URL pattern, we have register, login, and logout. I have this set up like this because this URL patterns is just going to be same for every other apps. So I do have this news app for now. If I create another app, it will also have register, logout, login, and logout. But few other details like news detail, adding news, categories, and those kind of URLs comes in are specific to that app. So that's why I have some news, I mean some URL route to that app and some others here. I can also make this to be part of this URL, I mean the apps url.py, but that's the reason. It's because it's to the entire project. Okay, so first let's focus on only the register page. So whenever a register request comes in, okay, this is the register request, right? We can ignore all of these. So whenever a register request comes in, we are going to register view from this view. So what I'm saying is, I've already imported news app view from the, so we have an app called news app, right? So from that news app there's a views.py. So we're just from this news app we are importing that views.py. So this is the file, and from it we are just calling that view as news app view. Okay, so whenever register view comes in, we are just going to execute news app view dot register. So news app view is this file, and there's a view called register. So this is the function called register. So we're just going to execute this, and the name for this view I call this register. So I can easily use this from HTML just by using the name register. I mean we have to use something like percent URL register and so on. So we'll be showing that later. So what happens is we are just going to use this register view. Okay, so you can ignore all of these for now, but what I'm doing is I'm importing everything from the models.py. Okay, I'm importing category, user profile, publisher, and news. Okay, so we need to import all that here, and then we need to have the user model, right? So the user model is not in the models.py because we got it from the Django's model user, so we need to import that as well. And forms, so we don't have anything in the forms.py right now, so we'll be implementing these. So but that's okay. So since we have these ready, we can write this view. Okay, so forms.py is what we are actually implementing. So we are just getting the user registration form. So let me go to forms.py now. Okay, so this will be the default import in this form. Form.py. Others and all will be empty for now, but I do have this pre-written, so I'm just going to explain this. Okay, so we need to import the user and from the models.py. You need to import everything, and also this form django.contrib.auth. So this provides the user creation form. So that's the register page that we are using. So we can ignore everything for now, this for now, and focus on only the register page. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the website. So as you can see, this website has, this register page has username, password, and password confirmation, the only three fields. Okay, and as I told you, username, password, and password confirmation are already in the user table. So user table contains all these fields that are ready to be stored. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a new form. We can name it whatever we want, but it needs to extend this user creation form. Okay, so only this class is going to have user creation form because we are creating an user. Other forms can have forms.model form. Okay, so we can ignore this for now and focus on it. So here in the class meta we're just going to have model equal to user. So we are saying that, we know that username, password, and password confirmation belong to class user. So as we're just telling Django that model is going to be user. So if I have username, password, and password to enter, forms.py is actually going to call the database and actually save into the table. Okay, so we'll explain it. I'll explain it quite in a bit. So all you need to provide is the user that the table that you want to render as a form. So since this form has fields like username, password, and password too, this is just a default. If I want to have any more field, what I have to do is I have to add email. If I want to add email, I'm just going to add something like email equal to forms dot email field, probably care field or something, and I'll just use comma hyphen here. Okay, comma email here. But if I don't define it here, and I cannot implement this because every field should be inside this user table. User table. These three are by default. If you want anything else more than that, I have to I have to extend it here and I have to include it here. But I don't want these. I need only username, password 1, and password 2, which is exactly in this register page. So only three fields I'm just going to use from this user's model. So if I have any profile user, profile model equal to profile, it's not correct to have user creation form and give it profile. But what happens is I can select all the fields. Where's the user? I can select user, is publisher, any fields that are available here. But since we are creating a user form, we need to provide the user. Okay, so username, password, and password we provided it. And so since we have this form, it contains these three fields. But in order to actually render it to the HTML, we need to go to the views.py. Okay, so we have two conditions here, if and else. So that means, so we'll focus on the else part first. So this is the else part here. So we're just creating an instance. So we have imported everything from the forms.py, right? So we are just creating an instance of this class. Okay, so creating an instance of this class and new form, and we are just giving it to render request news app register.html. So news app contains a register.html file. Okay, we'll come back to it later. But what it's saying is we are creating a new form, which is this form. So it contains fields like username, password, and password too, and we are just passing it to as a context like in your user form. So u form stands for user form. So this form will be available for HTML file as u form. So here, if I just have this u form, I mean, yeah, as this crispy is just going to beautify the form. That's why I told you to install like pip install Django crispy forms. I'll come back to it later, but just ignore, we don't have this itself. So it will just create not a good looking form. So what it says is we have a form and make it post. Okay, so we have this form tag, and this is just a form, and I have this kind of field set which is just for display purposes. So the main part is we have to use this user form. Okay, yeah, I don't need this p form, never mind. Actually, I first add a profile form as well, but we can ignore that. So what I'm trying to say is we have passed this empty form. So right now we don't have anything, right? And passed it to this context. So I'm just rendering it with this double quotes. So in order to use the whatever here I provided here, so this key, I'm just copying it and using it inside these two curly braces. Okay, so now it will render this form. So this is an empty form. That's the end of part one. And we have a sign up button here. Just what happens. So since we are having form that says method equal to post, we have to provide the CSRF token. So it is just for extra security. So it provides protection against cross-site attacks, and we are just going to have this. So without this, the form won't post. So this is how the registration works. And you can ignore these details for now. I have said, yeah, already have an account means I'm just going to route them to the sign up page. So already have an account is just a text, and I'm just going to have a sign in page. If I click on it, it will go to login page. Okay, so that's how it says login. So this is the name I provided in the euros.py, right? So name equal to login. So this I'll be able to refer to the HTML files. Okay, so since it rendered an empty user form for now we have this this condition will run. So for the first time when the user clicks on the register button, this empty registration page will appear. So after they have filled the details, for example new, and I think I already have the user, but testing at 123 and testing at 123. So right now I filled the form. So whenever I click on sign up, this HTML page is going to take all the form form information and going to post it in the, so this time the request.post will be equal to true. So after I click the sign up, so it will just be the posting, right? And then we're just getting the all the data. So request.post is kind of like a dictionary. So it has it has all these username along with the value, password along with the value, password 2 along with the value. So we're just creating instantiating this form, but now with request.post. Okay, so it contains, so we're just not creating this empty form. Now we're actually passing data to the form. So username will be assigned the username from this form. Okay, so request.post will automatically assign all the respective values here. And now we are just checking if the form is valid. For example, if my password 1 is wrong as password 2, okay, I removed the Django crispy forms, but it says the two password fields didn't match. So I'm now in the same page. So if I have this crispy tag ready, I'll say how to use this crispy form. But now let's focus on this. Okay, it says the two passwords didn't match. So it's because the form is not valid. So that's how. So after the form is valid, we're just saving it to, yeah, we're just saving the form. So this action is actually important. So by saving the form, we're actually creating an instance as well. So in the models.py, we have this table user, right? So assume that we have a table user and we have the username, password, and password too, and it will just create an instance and automatically save in the users dot, I mean, yeah, and user variable, and it will be saved. And after that, I'm just getting the username, and yeah, it just after that, uform contains the clean data and which I'm getting the username. So username is a field for that, right? I'm just printing account created for that user. And after that, we are redirecting to the profile page, which we'll cover later. But after the sign up has been successful and after the user has been created, testing at 1 2 3, we'll go to the yeah, it will ask me for the sign up first. New testing at 1 2 3. Yeah, it will go to the profile page directly, but profile page requires a sign in. That's why it took me to the login page first. Okay, so since we have this register ready, whenever the form is submitted, a user is actually created. Okay, so that's simple. So we're just creating an empty form for now, and whenever the submit button is clicked, now we're just filling it with request.post, and forms.py actually will save it to the database like this. I mean, it will just check, yeah, it will just assign to the database here, but it's first we have to check if it is valid or not. But it will be assigned without the database, just to the forms. Okay, so after the form is valid, we are just saving it. So this action will also save as a table instance to the database. Okay, so now we have this register page ready. Yeah, now the user can actually log in because the user has this u form, right? So let me just take it from the first. So first, when register route comes in, we're just executing this register. Okay, so this view is what you're executing, and here we're just instantiating an empty form from this forms.py and assigning it to the table. And now we just create after the register button is clicked, we are just assigning it and saving it to the database. Simple. So next we'll be implementing this login and logout routes. So luckily, a login page is just going to be same for almost every applications, right? It has a username and a password. So since it is very repetitive, Django provides the default login view that we are going to use. So Django has django.contrib.auth import views. I mean, we are just going to import this view from Django and saying it as auth views. So this auth view contains a login view, a logout view. Okay. So what we have done in register is we written a own view called register. Yeah, in this we have written an own view called register, and we passed it a template later on. Okay, but this kind of, so I can create a login view and implement it myself, but Django already has this login view. So what I'm going to do is use that login view. Yeah, use that login view, and since this is a class view, you have to provide it as view. I mean, we have this function, right? So this view is a function, but for example, this kind of view is a class view. So if we have to render these kind of views, we have to say as view. And then one important thing is we use this register, and the template will be executed. I mean, this register function will be executed and we'll be rendering our HTML page here. But since this since Django provides already the view, we cannot create a view and give the template, right? So it automatically, we can give the template name here. So after that view is executed, what we are going to render? So we need to render news app login.html. So I have this login.html and logout.html. Okay, that's what it is going to render, and name it will login. Okay, so that's it. And for the logout, it's the same. auth view contains this logout view, and we just need to give the template name, what it is going to render after this view has been executed. But we did not provide for register because we created register ourselves, and inside this we have this template provided. Okay, so I hope that is clear. And what happens in this login.html is, so it contains this yeah, CSRF token, because it's going to be a form as well, right? So first it will render an empty form, so that is the form here. So it is almost similar to the register.html. We have this form. I mean, it's almost very similar. There's actually not much difference, just changing if there's in the login HTML, it is saying if the user needs to create an account, and we're just routing it to the register. So if we in this page we are asking need an account, create an account, but in the register page we are saying if you already have an account, go to sign in. So that's why, so we're just rendering the form. So this will be defaultly provided by the views in the login view and in the login view. So while we render it, we just use the form and crispy. I'll explain it in a bit. And we have this sign up button, which is of type submit. Okay, and it will do everything for us. It will validate if the user is the password matches, and so on. Okay, so in both cases we are just rendering a form. Okay, but the sign up is just details. Okay, so everything is just the same. So after that I can say that so if I go to the home.view, this requires login. Okay, so I've set up things in such a way that testing at 1 2 3. Okay, so this home page, this is the home page. I don't have any slash home, but this is the home page. So this home page requires everyone to be logged in, but right now since I'm logged in, I can access this page. But if I log out and try to go here, Django will not allow me. First it will ask me to go to login, and it will just allow me to the login page. So if I have this profile, and it will just ask me ask me to this login page, and you can see the next equal to profile. So if I try to login, it will just go take me to the profile page. So this is the profile page, but not to the home page. It's because Django, so whatever URL we are trying to access before we logged in, it will be just stored in the next variable, so that when we log in we are not going to the default page, but to the page we are actually trying to go. Okay, so if I have this home page, so now I'm trying to go to the home page without login, so it is asking for login, testing at 1 1 2 3. So now it just lands me to the home page instead of profile, because before logging in I was actually trying to access the home page. So that's defaultly provided by Django. Okay, so how did I tell that this page needs a login? Okay, so that's actually easy. So we just need to import this decorator, even login record. We don't need this. I can actually in fact erase it. So this is the login decorator required. So whichever view we want to have a login page, we're just saying at login required in front of it. For example, the home page, I mean, we did not implement these, we'll just in a next video. So whenever we try to access the home page, we need to, so if the user is not logged in, we need to make them go to the login page. Okay, so that's how it goes to login page, and likewise for profile. But if the user is logged in, it will just show me the profile directly. But if I'm not logged in, it will just make me to go to the login page, and then it will remember what page I was trying to access before I was logged in, and it will, after logging in, it will just show me that page. So this login required actually by default does not if I don't, wait a minute, so let me close all this. So how does this so how does this decorator actually know where my login page is? I've provided in the urls.py. It's different. I just closed it. in the urls.py I just told like the template is in login.html and the logout template is in newsapp.logout.html, but this decorator does not know that information because it's not going to search in the urls.pattern. So in order to actually say that our login page is in that directory, we just need to go to settings.html and provide the login login page. So by default, Django will have the login page as account/login, but we did not create any account apps or anything. If we did, we need not have this, right? So if, whenever we use the login decorator, it search for this URL, and we did provide the name of the URL in our urls.py, name equal to login, right? So that's what we are addressing here. Wait a minute. Yeah, name it login and settings.py. We're just telling that. So we're just providing the name of the login view and it will just take care of it. And by default, the login redirect URL goes to home's view, right? So in the urls.py, I have it's not here. In the apps urls.py, I have this name called home. So what we are telling is, so whenever a login decorator is incurred, we are just going to login page, and after the user has logged in, we are going to redirect him to the home page. So that's why by default it redirects me to the home page after logging in. Okay, so this is the home page and it just brings me here. So that's how it's done. So now let's see how actually the base.html changes. So if I am logged in, all it shows me the two options are button logged out. If I'm logged out, the navbar changes to register and login. Okay, so when I log in, it changes, right? So in the base.html, we have this user. So I mean, we don't need to care about how this user is being passed, but we have this user variable, a user object, and it has a property called isAuthenticate. So that means if I'm logged in, if any user is logged in, okay, we're just going to display him, add profile and logout. Okay, so you can ignore these two details for now. So if the user is authenticated, we can have profile and add news and logout. Okay, but if the user is not authenticated, we're just going to say register and login. So that's how simple it is. Yep. And this is user.userprofile.isPublisher. So this means in the let me go to the models.py. So here I have a profile, user profile. Inside it I have this isPublisher boolean field, right? So that says if this boolean field, so user contains a user profile and it contains a isPublisher, right? So if this boolean field is true, I'm just making it an option, add news. Okay, so only if this isPublisher is true, the user will be shown. The isPublisher is true, the user will be shown this add news. So that's why this this user has add news, because isPublisher for that admin is true. So if we go to home and user profile, and for this user profile we have this isPublisher checked out, but for this user we don't have this isPublisher checked. But yeah, if I logged in as that other user, it will not show me this address. So that's why we're just having this. But I can actually go to add with this URL. So even though it does not show the add news for that URL, for example, yes, so I can actually access this URL, but it does not let me because I added a few customization. But it is actually possible, but we need to make sure that even though hard coding of the URLs will not fetch them the desired result. Okay, so yeah, let me just quickly implement. Yeah, the profile is actually, I mean, the register and login is actually over. Let me just show you how Django crispy form works. So crispy form, we need to have pip install Django crispy forms, and then we have to say crispy template pack. So this is the template that the bootstrap uses. I mean, sorry, the crispy form uses. So bootstrap for, so just using this bootstrap, and it will just render the forms in this fashion provided by bootstrap. Okay, and then in the whichever page I want the yeah, crispy forms, I have to load this load crispy form tags. Okay, and then I can use the yeah, this is the pipe symbol followed by crispy, and it will just show me in a nice fashion. So without this, the form would be clumsy. Yeah, so that's it. That should do it now. And one more thing is, in the base.html has static files. So if you want to have any CSS files, we need to create in the static and give some static access, and we need to create a folder called static, and we can add the CSS files here. So now to have the CSS file, we need to have the load static here, and then static CSS slash, so the path to the static file. It's because JS files, CSS files actually will be searched in this static directory. So we need to load this after providing it in the static, yeah, in the static URL, and then we need to, we can use. Okay, so now that we have the login and register page done, we are just going to implement the profile section. So this profile does not contain any information like profile pictures and area of interest and so on. So this is just going to select their preferences. So this logic is very similar to the register page. So we are just getting the model for register, I mean sorry, for profile, and we are making it as form, and we are just rendering the form. So forms can be of, yeah, contain any types. So this is just the many to many default form. So we're just going to implement these. Okay, so this is the exact profile detail. So let me just walk through from urls.py, and not this. So it is also in the main urls.py project, so which is news and urls.py. Okay, so whenever the profile route requests, we are just implementing the views profile, yeah, from the app view, just executing this profile. So that profile contains this information. So we know that there will be two types of information. So there are actually two types of profiles, to be honest. And first one will be, yeah, this try is for user's existing profile. So when we come to the profile, so this is just an existing user, and we are just having this selected already, right? Hindu and business. But if we were to create a new user, for example, latest, now I'm just going to create a new user. So it routes us to the profile page. So I just need to log in again, and it routes to the profile page for the first time. So for the first time, this is empty, right? So this is just a form, but it is exactly empty. So but we click on it. So if I just use my preferences like this, and the next time I go to profile, it is already pre-filled, right? So that's what we are doing. So there are two types of actions. First, when the profile is used for the first time, so the forms will be empty, right? So we're just going to implement this without anything, without any pre-filled data. But if the user is already existing and has already selected their preferences, so this time they're just going to, yeah, we have this pre-filled data. So that's what we are just trying to focus on. And then they might just change something and update, and those actions are managed by this. So these are the three actions that we are going to use. So either way, we are just using one form, and we are just uploading types of information. So either the blank form or with some pre-filled data, or when there's an update. Okay, so let me go to the forms.py. So news app, forms are pure. So this is the only model that we are going to use. So we know that in order to make a form, we need to have a model for that form. Okay, so that model for us is this exact information. So there are actually four details here: publisher, category, and so on. Okay, but we are just going to use two of those forms, so we don't need to yeah, we need only the preference, right? So for preferences, these two columns are only necessary. I don't need the is publisher, boolean, and the user, because it's not needed for the form. So they just need to change the preferences, which for which these two yeah, forms are enough, fields are enough. So I'm just using this user profile model. So I already imported those. So I'm just going to just give this user profile. Just like user, it has fields like username, password, and password 2 by default. But user profile has many forms, I mean many fields, but we are just going to use two of those. So we are just specifying just these two. Okay, so this form will be rendered in the views. So for the first time, empty form will be rendered, which I just showed you for a new user. But if there's an already existing user, I'm just going to give his existing information. So request.user.user profile has already information about these two for the current user. So if I just pass this as an instance, it will just automatically match to this existing user. So this user might have already has selected a publisher and category as well. So I'm just going to use it as request.user.user profile. So this will be matched, and then we are just rendering those. If I don't have anything here, okay, and if I just save and run it, it won't show anything because I did not get the, I mean I did not specify what the current user's selection was previously done. So in order to get these, I'm just refreshing it and I get the values already pre-filled, and then now the user can update. Okay, so for the first time the empty form will be rendered. For the second time, if the user has already selected those things, this will be pre-filled. So if I change it and update it, so what happens is yeah, we are just now posting the request.post along with the already existing information. Okay, so this is an important thing. So if I, so these things I would not have changed, right? So these things are just pre-existing data which it got from these things. But if I change any one of these as well, I can change this as to both of them, but only the changes that are necessary will be updated and the rest will be shown. So request.post will actually update it, and then it will just post the existing information. Okay, so that's how it works. So whenever there's a post, it will just render this form with pre-filled data, and if the form is valid, it's going to be valid for this one, and we're just going to save it, and this message will be successfully, I mean, shown, right? So profile successfully updated. So I'll just show how this profile is actually showing and in the HTML. But for now, and yeah, after that has been done, it is redirecting to the home page, right? I can make this as profile as well if I want, but I'm just want to go to the home page after the profile is done. Okay, so that's how it is. Okay, so for the messages, so this Django provides a good messaging system. So it just confirms with the HTML. So we're just going to import from contrib django.contrib import messages. Okay, and then yeah, and then we're just getting the profile success. I mean, we're just putting it as the message. So we have to pass the request object as well, and message.success. So this success is actually what the HTML, I mean bootstraps forms conform to. So if I go to base.html, and this is where I use the message to be displayed. So block content is actually the forms are, yeah, the forms are being extending. Yeah, I'll explain it in a bit. But so if there is any messages, so that means if we have any messages here, we are just iterating to the messages. We can have multiple messages, but since we have only one message, it will just have one message. And class alert, So Bootstrap has alert option called alert success, um, alert success, not this, alert danger, alert information, and so on. So they will produce different kinds of colors. So since I used message success, we'll just be having the message tag attribute as success. So that's yeah, that is exactly this. So this tag is success, right? So if I have something like danger, it will just update it as a red color, and whenever I change it, it will just be a red color one. Okay, so that's how it is. And about the form rendering, um, Django provides a good reusability. So I want the navigation bar and yeah, the footers and all everything to be the same for every page. Okay, what displays what differs in each login page, registered page is the content. So I'm just creating a content here and ending the content block here. So within these, so whenever I go to this, so it extends the base.html, so news app and base.html, and yeah, it means that it will have everything, every other yeah code from this base.html and use it here. The only thing we want to change is the block content. So we're just going to kind of override the block content, which I provided here. So within this block content is where this entire code lies. So just as equivalent as saying Control C and Control V. So I can just use this exact one as login page. So that's how it provides reusability. So within this, I'm just kind of overwriting here. So block content and end block content, and I'm having my content here. I don't need to provide the navigation bar, bootstrap importing, and so on. So in order to make that profile render these, just we need to update the categories and publishers. So if we let me log in. So if we go to the publishers, I can add new publishers and for example a category as well. So if there is any category or publishers only, it will be displayed here. So we need to create few things. So we can create fake categories for now, fake news for now, right? So I do have this existing news, so I can create new news as I've just shown you earlier, and profiles will be automatically added. So, and one more thing about profile is whenever I create a new register a new account, it will just create this user, right? So I have this models.py and also forms.py. So in the user registration form, I'm only giving the model as user. So whenever I click on the register button, it will only create the user only. Okay, but it won't create the profile. So we know that every user needs to have a profile in order to actually for them to use the profile option that we have just shown you. So but if I want to do one thing, so I need to create a profile for the user whenever the user form has been registered. So whenever this user object has been registered with the help of this form, so when I click sign in, the user will be registered, but profile is entirely a different table, right? We cannot say that whenever user is imported, since it has one-to-one field, profile is also be created. No, we just need to either way we'll just instantiate a class called profile is equal to user profile and give the information like user equal to user dot some user creation form, and then we give the category as something and so on. So this is exactly what happens if we need to create a profile. But since user is only created, we need to somehow tell Django that we need to also create the profile whenever this one. So if I didn't do that and registered, the profile page will be error. It would say like this user does not have any profile. But since I have this setup in the signals.py, it allows me to create a profile. So I'm just going to show you how we need to trigger the profile to be created whenever an object is created. So for that we need to create a new file inside this app called signals.py, and we are just going to implement these. Okay, so what it says is, so first we need to import a few things. So this is the post save I'll be explaining, and user we need to, the two models we need to correlate. So when the user is created, we need to create profile rights. So we need to import those and a receiver. Okay, so first we have two functions, create profile and save profile. Okay, so whenever a profile is created, so we're just using this create profile, and it takes instances like sender, instance, created, and keyword arguments. So it exactly gets these yeah, arguments from this decorator. So we are saying whenever the signals.py receives a signal that is after the save of the user model. So if there is any user that is being created, because the user is the table, right? So whenever there's a signal from the user and the object has been saved. So post save means after it's saved, and it is received by this receiver, which is going to execute this function. Okay, and it takes the sender and instance created and passed by these. Okay, so we're just saying if the user has been created. Okay, we are just creating a blank profile for him. So user profile dot objects dot create user equal to instance. So where is it? Yeah, this requires the user instance, right? Because this is the one-to-one field that is exclusively says that there is a profile for this user. So just mapping those. So we're just creating user equal to instance. So instance is already passed by this. So this instance is the current user for which the user account has been created. So we're just creating this, and that's how it is created. And we also have the save profile. So whenever there's an update in the profile, update in the user class, we just also updating the profile. So it's kind of like they both go along with each other. Okay, so these two signals are important for us to actually have those. In order for them to actually work, we need to just import this line in the apps.py. So apps.py already has this figured, so we just need to add a function called ready. It's a method. So we just need to import the signals.py. So from this news app, we're just importing the signals.py. Okay, so whenever ready, we just need to import it, and it will take care of the rest. So this is just the information I have to give you before we go to the feed. Ready, we're just going to implement the home page of the users. Okay, so this contains explicitly the news objects. So we're just going to get all the details from the news class, and we're just rendering here. So this is the code, for example. Yeah, this is the one. So home, so we know that the urls.py contains home, and the main urls contains. So whenever the domain name only appears, just routing to the news app, and from the news app takes care, and still we just have the domain name. So, and we are executing the views.home, providing the name equal to home. Okay, so this is the home. So what we are doing is, so first let's start python manage.py shell. So this provides all the Django preloaded. It's not a regular Python 3 shell, but this contains all the Django information, so we need to have this. So I'm just going to import from django.contrib.auth.models import user. So I'm importing all the tables that we have created for our models, and from news app.models import everything. Okay, so now we have the models of everything. So just kind of replicating how we are trying to accomplish this page for users. Okay, so first let me create news.objects.all. Okay, so here I'm just printing every news that has been ever created. So before starting, we might need to add a few news by going to the admin site and adding these, and after saving there will be few news. Okay, so we have every news, but for the home page we need to customize the news, and we need to show only the news that belong to a particular category and publisher. Okay, so the user can have multiple categories selected and also multiple publishers selected. So this query fetches all the news from that user, all the news that has ever been created with irrespective of companies and so on. So what you're going to do now is, so I'm just replicating this code. So I'm just going to execute. Let me close this. Execute user equal to user dot objects dot get id equal to, yeah, let me get the id for first user, and then I have to create a profile object. So user profile objects dot yeah, get user equal to user. So what I've done is I've got the user object of the first user and profile for the first user. So we know that all set by, so this is just an user object, while as the is publisher can be boolean and so on. So since I have this information, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to get what the user has subscribed. Okay, what the user has subscribed to, for example, categories. So profile dot category dot all. Okay, so this tells that the user has selected categories like startup, space, and tech. So if I go to my profile, and we can see the users category are startup, space, and tech. Okay, so now we have what the users have selected as category. So I'm just going to store it as user category. Okay, and now let's see what he has subscribed to the publishers. So prof dot publisher dot all. So we can see that he is subscribed to both of these. So I'm just going to select one of these. If I execute it again, it shows only this. Okay, so I'm just going to store this in user profile, user publication. So now I'm just going to query the news that the user has selected based on his category and publisher. Okay. So in order to select news on category, so news.objects.filter. So filter just filters according to the conditions. Okay, so it returns a query set get, while get returns only one object. So if I get id equal to 1, it just shows the first news. But if I use filter as 1, it returns a query set. So filter can return multiple objects. So I'm just going to use filter. So I'm just going to filter based on the user names. So publisher equal to 1. So if I give the primary key of the publisher, it just print me all the news done by the publisher. So first publisher. So in our case, the first publisher is Hindu. So it prints all the news published by this publisher. But if I press 2, this prints all the news that has done by this publisher. So we need to say that we need the publisher of that we got from the user. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so for that, what we need to do is, yeah, this is the profile.category. All right. So we need to say news.objects.filter publisher in equal to user pub. So user pub has all the publishers. So it might be Hindu, Deccan, or both Hindu and Deccan. So since we provided a query set, publisher equal to 1 means that we are providing the ID of it. So Hindu means 1, Deccan means 2. So that's how we got here. But since we want to customize the user, and the user, this has returned a query set. Okay, so since we have the query set, so this is a query set, right? It's not just publisher into ID. So we need to have publisher in. So it selects, so it's just a set method, right? So if something is in this list, it just returns 2. So Hindu, so user selected is Hindu, and the news that are going to be displayed are just going to be in Hindu. So if there is Deccan news, so for example, this news sees the publisher of it, and it is not in user pub. It's because the user pub contains only Hindu. Okay, so that's why it did not show this. And now we can use the category just like this. So user cat and category in. So in is not default. I mean, in we are just providing along with the name of the table. So in models.py, we are just category equal to 1 means we are just getting the news. So in the news, sorry. So in the news, we are just getting published. So if we can use underscore underscore public along here to get a query set. Okay, so now we have filtered both separately. Okay, but we need both, like we need to provide and condition here. So and publisher in equal to user pub, but this won't work because like it's showing me syntax error. So we need to use the and operation. We need to from django.db.models import q. Okay, and we are just we're just enclosing this each of the query in q, inside q, and even this too. And now it will just select me according just like the user preferences. So we're just getting all the news that satisfies both of these conditions. The publisher should be in here, but also the category. That's what exactly we are doing in this queue. So user profile, and we're just getting the user profile of it. So I don't need to use this list as well. I can just directly use this. Okay, and so yeah, I'm just directly using it here, so I don't need this. Okay, so this is the exact filter that I've conditionally provided here, and I'm just got all the news. So I've got all the news that the user likes and sorted by ID. So ID is always going to be incremented, so the latest news is going to have the biggest ID. So we're just going to have it as a negative, I mean descending order. So minus ID means just sorting the news, every news. At last we are just sorting it by the order. Okay, so this extra bit of information, yeah, we can just pass this news and render it in the HTML, but what I'm exactly doing is I need to show all the categories along with that, right? So only space tag and so on. So I not neatly display, I'm just getting all the information inside this loop because I cannot use exactly these kind of queries inside the HTML template. So I'm just getting all of them and zipping them. So zip iterates both of them at the same time. So first object, and also will contain the first object of this one. Okay, so this news list, I'm just providing it here. So category is just, I'm just getting the category of this news, but news is going to have multiple categories, right? There might be sometimes two categories and one category only sometimes. I mean everything is, yeah, startup tech. Yeah, so these contains only one category, this is two, and this one. So since it's going to be a list of categories, I'm just, so cat is a list, so I'm just appending the categories every time. So inside this HTML, I'm just using this for loop. Okay, so news and cats in cat list. So since this gave a zip object, right, so we're just iterating through it. So zip provides a nice feature that we can iterate both of them simultaneously. So for that particular news, we can say what the categories. So since category is a list in itself, so we're just listing, yeah, we're just for looping inside this list and printing the cat dot category, so that it will be displayed even though it has multiple categories. So in this card, we are just printing just few details. We're not getting the exact full description. It just title, short description, and an image associated with that news. So every news has an image, but only if we click that, it will go to a detailed version of that image. So it will open the big image and show the description. Okay, so for that, it is like printing the news.title, news.chart description, everything that we have in this news. So except, yeah, category and published, we'll use published as well. So just printing everything in the HTML. So news.title, so news contains everything, right? And yep. So additionally, I provided this as link. So now the link has been clicked, we'll just sort everything as the tech only. And if I press only the publisher, we'll just provide every news by that publisher only. So for that, I'm just like URL. So whenever the category is clicked, I just ask it to go to this URL along with the category ID. So Hindu has category ID 1. So whenever I click it, it goes to, sorry, um, yeah, space has category ID 2, I guess. Yeah, so whenever I click it, it goes to this URL, and it gives the ID of the category as the primary key. So with this, I am actually implementing the category, so which I'll show in the next video. So for now, news is kind of over. Likewise, published, I'm giving the URL as publisher detail instead of category detail, and also the publisher's ID. So if I click on this, we'll go to publisher ID and Hindu. Hindu has the ID of 1, right? So now when I click it, it will go to 1. But if I press 2 here, just give the decans. So these are just implemented by generic views. Um, yeah, it's for the next video. So for now, it's kind of over. In this video, we're just going to see this functionality that whenever I click on the news, this news expands and every detail is provided. Okay, so you can, the most important thing is, so if I go to the home page, whenever I click on it, it just go to this URL, news detail, and this is the ID of that news. Okay, so actually this is very easy. Django provides a convenient way to actually render pages with the help of these keys, yeah, primary keys. So what we are going to do is, so we can ignore all of these for now. Okay, oh, so just focusing on this URL pattern, this one, news detail. So in the news.html, so this is where all the news are, sorry, this is where all the news are printed, right? So whenever I made this card header as an entire link, okay, so this card header is entirely linked. You can click on whichever within this card header and it will go to a link. So the link is URL news detail. So news detail is just the name I've given it here, so it can search from there, and news detail and news.id. So this is just the parameter it is passing. So it will, so in this case the news ID, so every news contains an ID, right? So I can start news.objects.get ID equal to 1. So it'll give me the first news, and then I can use, for example, description or a title of the news and pictures.url, so URL of the news, and so on. So that's actually important. So all we need to get all the detailed description of an image is just the primary key. So we are passing the primary key, and that's why whenever I click on a news, it goes to news detail and passes the primary key, news detail, and pass the primary key. And what happens to rest is just going to this URL. So whenever this URL pattern recognizes a news detail, and along with it, we are just saying that it is going to receive a primary key and it's going to be of type integer. So we need to provide in this syntax. Okay, so pk and int. So it will just, whenever receiving this, it will just get this view, execute this view. So we've been using the functional views till now, so just def, home, and so on. So we don't need to provide this kind of as view, but whenever we need to use the class view, we need to use this as view method. Okay, so this execute this class view I just told you. So news detail view is what is going to execute. Yep, and you are right, you are not saying it wrong. All I have the detail logic is this. I don't need to give anything to this view, so I don't need to render any of these whenever I want to show the object. So this is the generic detail view. So for that, we need to import from Django.use import generic, and it has functionalities. So we're just using generic view.detail view. You don't need to care anything about this later part. Our focus is only this. So detail view always accepts a primary key. So without this detail view will not work. Okay, so all we need to give is which model we need to give. So news is what we are trying to give, right? And with the help of this primary key, it will just pass, it will just query all the necessary details. So it will query these conditions: news.object.get id equal to primary key, all by default inside it. We just need to give this model of which we're going to do, and it will render, I mean it will give this as a context. So I right now have used this news list as a context to this, right? So I needed to provide a template here, but by default it just expects the template name to be the name of the model underscore detail. So that's why I named it news underscore detail. It expects this exact model. Okay, so that's why we need to give it, otherwise it won't know which template to render, because in the euros.py we did not give template name equal to and all. And yeah, we just have this name. So it expects, where is it, yeah, it expects a name of the view and template to be news detail, and here it'll just pass the corresponding news belonging to that particular id. Okay, I hope that is clear. So what it does is, we have the in the euros.py, it receives the primary key, right? So whenever it receives, it just gives the news and it fetches this news.object dot, and with the id equal to being the primary key, and that object it will just pass through the context name news detail.html. So in this we can accept this news. See, I mean like this I did not provide any news list to access. So in the news.html we can see we have this news list and them looping through all of them, but I don't need to give any of that. I just need to, I can use any of it here. Okay, news.short description, and inside it I'm rendering everything. So inside it, as you can see, I have rendered news.title, news.short description, and image tag. Inside image tag I'm giving the news.pictures.url. So you know that the models.py we have the image field and its name is pictures. I should probably name it picture, but okay. So since pictures, I'm just rendering news.pictures, and we know that in the source tag we need to provide the URL. So that's why we have this yeah, news.pictures.url, and I'm loading the description, and we don't need this comment for now. Oh, it's card. Okay, so that's what is exactly happening here. I've just rendered everything, and image fluid helps us to contain this image inside this content section. So content section I have the CSS, which it has the fonts and some text. Okay, so that's how it is. So it just gets the news detail of whatever id we give. Okay, so news detail 3 has this, news detail 1 has this, and so on. 2 is, I think I deleted it, yeah, and 4 I should deleted it. Yeah, these are the news. 15. Okay, so that's how the detail view works of Django. And now let's try to see how the in the news.html how each sections, yeah, how clicking on the publisher gets the publisher id and space gets the space id and so on. So exactly it uses the detail view as well. Okay, so detail view, I'm just asking it to go to the publisher detail because I have detail view called publisher, and for category I have the detail view for category, but I'm not going to use the default category because all detail view does is just executes one object and it executes every detail for it. But I need to have every news object for that detail view, right? So publisher detail one, if I have this one, it will implement all the details published by it, but it won't know how to actually sort these. So I need to sort by a few things as well. So that's why I need to give it, I need to override the default context, and I need to provide few of them myself. Okay, so if I give news here, it won't work well because it will just show one news of it. Okay, so whenever I click on category, it just goes to category and passes the primary key of it. So in the urls.py, we have this category detail, and it accepts the primary key, and it executes this cat detail view. So what do we have this in this cat detail view? So I provided model equal to category, and in order to, so here I did not provide any get default context because the context data provided by this news detail view was enough for me. It gave this news context, and that is enough for me to render the whole news. Okay, so in the news detail, but here it's not enough for me, so I need to define this function and use the parameters and keyword arguments. So I need to get all the context data, so I need to call this old the original class, that is the parent class, and get the context data that has been previously built for us by default. It has previously built a new subject, right? So likewise we need to get the context, and above the context we will just add a few things. Okay, and we will return the context. So after adding, yeah, we're just adding some extra details into the context, and we're just returning it. So what I'm actually returning, so we know that category has contains the self.keyword arguments pk. So we have this primary key, right? So we can access the primary key inside this by self.keyword arguments of primary key. So, and I am filtering the news based on this category, and I'm sorting it by minus id. Okay, so if my category is, for example, Hindu, I'm getting all the news from the of that public category. Okay, because Hindu's category, sorry, category, I'm sorry, I thought it was published. So okay, so categories means space, publisher means Hindu. So whenever I click on space, just go to 2, and 2 is the category ID for that space. So it got all the news related to space, which has the category space, and yeah, it got every news of that category, and we are just ordering it by, yeah, sorting by minus id. And here, like the same, I'm just using this to get the category, yeah, category as well. So since this is enough for me, and I'm just going to exact the same code. I'm zipping the both news and cat. Okay, and I'm just passing this news list. So now news list contains news of only this particular category. For example, if I have 1, it will give me startup news, and if 3, I think it will give me tech news. Okay, tech, and so on. So since I have this, I am now ready to pass this news list. And so we know that this is a sorry, I am here, but both the codes are exactly the same, just kind of overwriting the same things, except we are filtering by publisher here. So category, so now we are just passing this category as a context, and since the model name is category, it expects a category detail.html. So here we're just iterating the news list as in the news.html, and that's it. Okay, and likewise everything is just the replica of published. A publisher has the replica of category. So publisher means it just go to publisher detail instead of category detail, and passes the primary key as the id. So publisher, we know that Deccan has id of 2, so it is passing that id, and we're just, yep, this is exactly the same. So we're just getting the filter based on the publisher. So we're just getting the primary key of the publisher, and now we're just getting the category and printing the news list. I'm passing the news list as a context, and we have to return it. So we have to return the context, otherwise, because this function expects a return value. Otherwise, if we have this category, it won't actually show up in the HTML. Okay, so that's how we implemented these. Up next, we'll just be adding news graphically. So we know how to add news in this in this page. We just need to show it in a more graphical way. and the user needs to upload an image. So in this video I'm just going to optimize few of this code. So I mean it perfectly works, but I don't need much of this code. So what I thought initially is the way I got the category for the particular news. So this is not even necessary for that. So I don't need to iterate through this. I can just use it in the HTML template. Okay. So let me just remove all the categories. Okay. And now I just need to pass this news. So news is a query set, right? It retains multiple news that follow this condition. Okay. So I'm going to use this news here, and in the HTML, I don't need this cats because I have removed that. And here is where I use the category, right? So the category is actually available in news.category.all. Okay, so I think that should do it. Okay, so if I refresh the code now, it should run well. Okay, so it's the same code. Maybe I can just use a different one to see if it works. Okay, so what I've done is I need not have the category because let me open this. So if I do news.objects.all, it returns me all the news objects, right? So I'm going to get the first news, and this is the news object, and I'm going to query the group, sorry, category of that belongs to this news. Okay. Okay. So with this query, so this is the news object, and I'm using category.all. So if I don't use this parenthesis here, so assuming that this is a method obviously, but if I don't call it as a method, Django is going to return this bound method of many to many object. So in the HTML I thought that's not possible because in the Django template we cannot use this all like this, we cannot use this, so it returns some crazy object. So but it works, the HTML works fine without the that being said if it's an attribute or just a method. So that's what made me to actually write this logic that I had. But since this does not care being a method or an attribute, we can use this directly. Okay. And one more thing is we don't actually need to use this kind of views here. Okay, that's because all the all the information about the user profile and all is available in request.user. So if I need to navigate to the profile, I need to use request.user.profile. Okay, I think let me go to the models.py. Okay, what's the profile name? Yeah, it's user profile, right? So I need to say user profile, and I'll just copy this and paste it here. So now if I run it, it should work fine as well. Okay, so yeah, nothing changed, I guess. Let me rerun the server because I'm having some issues with my command prompt. Okay, so that worked fine. So this query was possible because request.user contains all the information about that. So you can actually walk through this from the request.user. So that means, so the request.user contains a user profile, right? So we just need to provide all of them without any capital letters or without any uppercase letters. So that's why I was able to use request.user user profile. So since this user is associated with this user profile, we can use that. And this user profile, sorry, this user profile contains this category or publisher, whatever we write. So with the help of this, we can access these. Okay, so that's why we can use publisher. So dot all gets the every publisher that it has, and likewise I used it. So I can change it for every code. Actually, this code actually is only 3 lines longer. Okay, so we can change it from here as well. So I don't need this category and all, and just news. That's it. And also here, Okay, so that should run it. Okay, by category. Okay, oh, I should change the HTML as well. So yeah, I would change it, and that's it for this video. So I just want to provide an efficient method to use it. I don't need to use some kind of code that just works. So as soon as fade out, I'm let you know. So now we are going to talk about the add feature, which is inside the profile. Users which have the publisher has been set. So user profiles, and we need to create a user that has been checked with this publisher right here ID. So those can see this ad news. So whenever the ad URL comes in the mm, yeah, in the urls.py. So whenever there's an ad URL, we're just executing this ad. So what is inside the ad? So this is just exactly the same. I mean, almost the same as register. So we have in the forms.py, we have created a news creation form and a news updation form. Actually, we are not updating any news because it should be provided by. It should be taken care of by the Django administrators because we should not edit the news, right? So only if there's a genuine reason we have to update news. So I provided only news creation form. So it is exactly the same as profile registration form, update form, and so on. Okay, so I think I don't need a profile registration form. I don't know why did I have those profile update form. I think I don't need this. Okay. Profile update, profile creation. Yeah, I'm not using it. Okay. So I just need to know, I just need to give which model I'm using the profile for. I mean, which model I'm using the forms for, and I'm going to implement every fields. So here I just provided the selected fields that I want to show in the forms, and only the selected fields here because the user will have a lot more other fields, and the profile also will have a lot more other fields. But here I'm just providing which model, and I want every fields of the model. So in the models.py, you can see we have the fields like title, short description, who's the publisher, which category, which I mean when is it is published, and who's the publisher, description, and image. Okay, so we need to render yeah, every kind of details in the forms. So for that we are just using this, and in the views.py, it's simple as the registration. We just need to render the forms. So actually for the first time we'll just create the new form. I'll come to this bit later. So for the first time we're just creating a new form. Okay, so whenever I go to the add news, an empty form will be shown up. So if I want to, so whenever I fill the details, for example, I don't know, whenever those details have been filled and an image has been uploaded, and after the submit has been given, this function will be and this part of the code will be executed. So here, so let me first show the HTML page. So it is, I think, news, not news. Where am I rendering it? Add.html. Okay, so here we're just like, so since we have the method equal to post and CSR of token, yeah, we should give, right, since we have post method, and I'm just rendering the form, rendering this exact form. So since we have a form, it just renders and we don't need to care much about it, and I want it to quickly speed. And this end type is actually very important. This will be forgotten by most, and it will give the errors that you get, like you cannot just Google and solve it because there's actually more errors, I mean more types of keywords for this error. So when it is because we are uploading an image, right? Whenever we upload an image and submit, we need to say to the form that it is going to be part of the form data. I mean that image is going to be part of the form data, otherwise our image will not be uploaded. I mean only the name of the image will be uploaded, but not the actual image. So we cannot do anything with the name unless we are in the same system. So we need to give this as n type equal to input. So this is actually very important, and I forgot actually, and it gave me a lot of headaches. So so now after the form has been created, it is going to use request.post. So request.post contains all these titles, and it will like fill the forms according to every fields. Okay, but so since we are having images, it is of type file, so it will be in this request.file. So whenever we are just uploading any audio, video, pictures, anything, or PDF or anything, we're just going to use request.files. So since and then it will just, yeah, match to image field and so on. So we have this image field, right, and request.files will be matched to that. And if the form is valid, we're just going to save it, and we're just going to print a success message. So we added from the publisher, right? So if I give something, so if I submit, I can add submit without the, I don't know what category I gave, but okay. So I need to give it as an image because the other forms won't render. So I need, or I can add an if condition in the news.html. Okay, where is it? Yeah, so I'm just saying if news.pictures, then only render this. Okay, otherwise don't render it. So end if. Okay, so this I have it, and also in this news detail.html. Okay, so what I've done is like without any image, so I'm not even sure if the news will have an image. It's just optional, but I am actually wanting it to render in HTML, so it's because of this. So I'm just adding condition if there's only pictures, I'm going to show the image, right? So that's it. So now we have this ready, and okay, I forgot to show you the message, but okay, so it will just show that the new news has been added from this user. Okay, and then it will just redirect to the home page. So whenever I used it, it just redirects me to the home page. So that's how the ad is implemented. So everything is just the same as register and profiles, right? We're just rendering in the forms.py. It's just giving the fields of the model in which the field should be, and we are actually rendering it. But the only difference is we are just uploading an image this time. Okay, so okay, there's three things that we need to actually upload an image. So since we have this request.files, it won't actually show it in the HTML unless we do something. So first thing is, I showed you already, that is that is in the add.html. We have to, whenever we are uploading an image, we have to give this end type. Okay, and the other thing is in the settings.py, not this. Yeah, let's open, let me close everything. Okay, in the settings.py, we're gonna actually need these. So this is just display template. I'll just paste it here. So there are two types of files possible. So static files and media files. Okay, so static files are just the, I told you that CSS, JS files and everything for the CSS files and so on. So we need to give static files the location, and media files are the files that are actually uploaded by the user. So right now in the ad page, I have used this, I have used an image, right? So we need to store that image in some directory, and we need to provide the URL as well. But static files are during the deployment, development that we are going to see. because it's just a CSS and JS files. But after post, yeah, I mean during production, the users are going to upload image. So there are two types of files that we are going to store. So static and media, those are. So with that, we have the static and media, right? So we know that users are going to be uploading images, and I wanted in the models.py, I wanted the images to be stored in, yeah, to be stored in new images. So this new images, it searches for the media directory. So that's why inside this media directory, it just create a new folder called new images and uploaded all the medias. Okay, if I didn't give this, it would have started uploading all the, yeah, pictures without images directly in the media folder. So since, yeah, we need to have these two kinds if we are going to use static and media files. So we just need to provide the static URL and media URL, and these are the, yeah, static provides the local, I mean relative path to the browser, and media URL provides the, I mean static root provides the absolute path. It's because Django does not actually serve the web page once it has been um, uploaded. For example, it has been deployed. For example, servers like Apache might take care. So we cannot just rely that Django will be serving all these files. The web servers are Apache and so on. So right now, Django development server actually takes care of this. So that's why if we have any errors, you'll just see this kind of errors. So page not found is just by Django. So if we, during production, we'll just turn the debug equal to false. Actually, I mean debug equal to, and it will stop the Django from actually displaying this error. But that means Django is actually taking care of the file servings and so on. So for that, in order to for web servers like Apache to actually work, we need to give static files separately. So that's why we're just giving it. And after this, we have given the static file. We need to give the URL patterns. So it needs to know where we have to find the URLs, right? So we have to go to the projects, yeah, projects URL patterns, and we need to append this. So we're just saying that static files are going to be this media root. Okay, so we're just telling where to find it. So this code is only used for development, so right now, but if we are deploying, we just need to change a bit of things, and we need to configure, like we need to implement this code python manage.py collect static. So this collect static command will be taken care of by the server, and it knows where to actually find the, where actually to find the images or media, and where actually to serve the files and upload the files, save the files, and so on. So I think that covers for the entire video. So we have implemented the adding page and so on.